Hello. So today I'm going to have a talking stream. GC Koushien 2022 Afterthoughts, message to students. So before I begin, I'm going to pin the link to the form where you can ask me anything about, well, mostly regarding my live streaming of game entries in GC Koushien 2022. The form will close in less than 24 hours. I mean, as of this, as I am talking, there's no questions yet, so so hopefully if anyone is interested, you can just fill the form and ask me everything. So now without ado, let's continue. So okay, so I am Razrai, a VTuber from Malaysia who primarily streams Japanese freeware games. I have started streaming from 1st January of 2021. I'm also a participant for the Top of PB Awards with more than 250 games live streamed. If you want to know what are the games that I have live streamed so far, there's a playlist that I will set. I'll put that in chat. Okay, so the link is copied and yep, here you go. So now let's start with the topics that I'm going to talk today. So I'm going to, before I'm giving advices regarding game dev entry in GC Koushien 2023 and overseas expansion, I'm going to talk a bit on overall observations and some common trends. So first will be overall observations. So I have found that the average quality of the games have more or less increased compared to last year, but I haven't, how should I put this? I have yet to find a game that leaves a lasting impression for me, unlike in last year where Monogatari, Lumino La Ruta Natural and Cross Relief have left deep impressions on me, but this year this seems to be not the case. And I also found out that some games share the same base concepts. Maybe this is just because I streamed more games compared to last year. And to put this in perspective, last year I have streamed 92 games, while this year I have streamed 192. So that's more than double last year's amount. So there are 4 games based with magnetism as a concept, and there are 3 games which are pretty much vampire survivors clones. And this is not exactly a bad thing, because in gaming world this is definitely a common thing to happen. So maybe this will be the case for next year, but who knows. And some common trends that I have found out are first, mandating the use of X input controllers, which makes sense considering the popularity of consoles in Japan relatively compared to the rest of the world. But X input controllers are actually kind of expensive, especially in developing countries, where an average generic X input controller would cost at least twice of that of a direct input controller. So there's an advice regarding this later on. And then usage of, so the next trend would be usage of music and lack of thereof. And I mean, this is a student game dev competition after all, so there's a lot of games using music from a lot asset websites, and the usual subjects such as Dova syndrome and all those stuff, those familiar names, at least among Japanese people, which isn't bad. And I also noticed that some games, they don't have music at all, which just makes the games more, how should I put it, boring than it should be. And there's an advice we got related to that. Okay, let me check my mic first. Okay. I also noticed that a lot of games, they don't put end user documentation in the game folder, which is not a good thing considering that Japanese freeware game websites required an end user documentation in the zip folder, and it doesn't make sense for game devs to leave that out. There will be an advice regarding this later on. So the last common trends that I see is the frequent updates, and this is actually a good thing for players but a bad thing for streamers, because there have been a few cases where the game gets updated after I do a live stream for the games, and this necessitates reruns of those games later on, which I do plan to do next year. So that's it for the updates. Let's see if there's any chat incoming. Okay, nothing so far. Okay, on to the next slide. So this is more of a general advice for those who have participated and those who are intending to participate in the next year. So first of all, if tutorials get in the way of game flow, at least provide a way to show controls and game systems within the game itself. So I think a lot of game entries more or less observe this advice, but there are some which openly stated that please refer to the manual. Which is definitely something that you should not be doing if you are a solo dev planning to release a game in the future. So if let's just say that gamers these days, they definitely need a holding hand at some level or another. And if they can't play a game, they will stop playing it. So next one would be check games for issues using other people's machines and controllers. So one thing that I noticed is that the game looks fine during, how should I put it? So the games look fine during the introduction videos and whatnot, but when I actually try to play the game, at best, the game doesn't really reflect what has been seen in the trailer videos, and worse, being, the controls are completely not working. And there are also some fringe cases where the left and right trigger buttons in my X input controller doesn't work, which is definitely, I think the best way for me to overcome this is to buy an official Xbox controller, but the problem is it's very expensive. Even a generic Xbox 360 controller would cost twice what I have now, so it's not really an option for me, and likely for other gamers with same economic problems. So on that, related to that, if possible, try and make games compatible with direct inputs. The reason is obvious. Direct input controllers are cheaper and more affordable for the masses, and by making those games compatible with direct inputs, you will make the game more accessible for more gamers, and that will definitely help your game. So the last one, improve accessibility whenever possible. This is a tricky subject that I don't really have the knowledge to talk about, but as an autistic person myself, I do hope that more gamers with disabilities can be able to enjoy games as they are able for the counterparts. And this is something that you should really consider when you are making games. So now, let's go with the real focus of this stream. So, okay, here's my advices regarding entry in GC Koushien 2023. Okay. And before I start, I think you have already known that the pre-entry for that event has started, and it has been announced during the awards ceremony that next year's event will start on January. So this advice definitely come at an appropriate time. But keep in mind that this is from a perspective of a streamer, so you might want to ask a second opinion for maybe your mentors or your friends or something like that. So first, decide right in the beginning whether to allow streaming or not. So this is important for me and other streamers, because there have been cases where I have scheduled a game for streaming for weeks to come, and then when I try to schedule the stream, the permission has been revoked. And this makes everything gone haywire, and I have to reschedule things and all that. It's quite a lot of hassle. And then there's also the cases where some games they don't allow for streaming, and then suddenly they change their minds, which in some cases, no, in all cases of such thing happening, I just simply put them for next year. So this is something that needs to be decided early on before you submit the game entries. It's good for you and it's good for everyone else. So the next one would be work on the game in reasonable pace early on, because entry period might change to an earlier date. So what happened for this year is that for last year, the deadline for game entries was on November, and then this year it was made earlier on 31st October, which sends a lot of game devs into panic mode. And also some game devs straight up said that they will delay their entry to next year, which is kind of a sad situation, but it really can't be helped. So for this year, please do not end up with the same mistake. So just, how should I put this? So make your game in a pace that you normally would do when the deadline is near, because you won't know when the actual deadline is. So the next one would be assign one person with Twitter account, and even better, fluent in English, to manage copyright and communications. So in my case, sometimes when games have issues and then they don't have a Twitter account available for communication, I have to resort to use the contact form, but I'm not sure if this is because of language barrier or something else. The messages to the game developers haven't been replied to, so I decided to give up. And also, in some cases, I might ask permission separately if the permission is not stated in Inano Game Parade website. So if, how should I put this? So having no means to contact means I'm very likely not stream your game. So the next advice that I can give is learn English or get a machine translation service. Here's the thing, when I attended the award ceremony, which is hosted at gather.town, a lot of the entrants pretty much expressed regret at not taking English seriously enough. So, and another thing is, if you are a solo dev, learning English will definitely help you to translate the game into English, which will save a lot of cost later on. And I hope that the same situation won't happen, but it's highly unlikely because, I mean, there's a reason why Japan has a low English proficiency, especially compared to other Asian countries. And the next advice is do not mess with the download link until the award ceremony ends. So this has happened to me for a few games where I intend to try the games out, but when I access the download link, the game has been deleted. This will make, how should I put it? Gamers do not appreciate such a move, and your game will likely be less popular if you do that, because the game has become inaccessible, and it also will cause problems on my side as well, because the last thing that I want to see happen is after I stream a game, people come to me and say the game, I can't download the game anymore. Then I would have a trouble answering to them. So, but after the award ceremony, everything is fair game, since no one's gonna pay attention to that anymore, and you can just safely remove the game from your Google Drive folder, and no one's gonna bat an eye. The next one will be provide live stream thumbnails and game introduction PDF in game download folder. So on the live stream thumbnails part, it makes our job easier, since I can just use the thumbnail and put it in the thumbnail settings on YouTube. Otherwise, I have to boot up the game, take a screenshot, and then use it, which does take some time. I would say that giving live stream thumbnails in the game download folder is definitely a nice gesture that won't cost you much. Also, regarding the game introduction PDF, I mean, it's already mandatory to be submitted when you submit your game. So it's not much of an extra step when you include the PDF found in the game folder. It will certainly help players who want to try out the game to at least understand the game's controls without needing extra effort. So on to the next slide. Name your zip files properly. I have dealt with a lot of situations where the zip file was given generic names and I can't differentiate which zip file is which, and I have to copy the name of the game and rename the zip file, which is kind of getting irritating when a lot of game devs do this. So if you are lazy, at least put the game name as your zip file folder name so that people can organize their zip folder downloads properly. Next up is decide what to do with the finished game. So I have seen some games being uploaded to other websites, such as Stream, such as Unity Room and all that. And if this is something that you have to decide early on, whether you want to promote the game in other platforms or just leave it. It's up to you, but if you have decided, at least having this decision in mind will, how should I put this? Crap, I'm really at a loss of words. So the last thing that you want is you have second thoughts after the game competition ends and your development team already disbands. At that time, it will be hard to assemble a new team for such purpose. Okay, so on to the next advice. So make good use of music asset websites if there's no music composers in your team. So as I said before, there are quite a few games without music in them, and that makes the game more boring than it should be. So it's very easy to search for music assets that you can use in your game, and including those will increase the artistic flair in the game, and people will be more enjoy playing the games. The next advice is give reasonable playtime estimates. But so on this regards, I found out that quite a lot of games underestimates the game time that needed. One particular game that strikes out is Kickstarter, which is normally, let me double check that one. This game is listed in Minano Game Parade website as taking 20 to 40 minutes to clear, and when I actually tried to play the game, it took me over 2 hours. And this has adversely affected my streaming plans for the day. So don't assume that everyone who plays the game are skilled at it. Maybe at something like 20% to 30% from your expected game time. It will make live streamers' job easier. The next one would be give detailed streaming restrictions, if any. So on this regard, as the events keeps on going, I expect more YouTubers will do coverage on the game, and you need to account to the fact that a lot of those channels will have monetization enabled, and you need to think, do I want to allow YouTubers to earn off the game that I have made? If you don't want to allow people to monetize the content made using your game, please state the restrictions upfront. The last thing that I want to see is to have copyright disputes when the permission listing has no monetization prohibition, but when someone does a monetized stream or content for that particular game, the game dev sends a copyright strike later on, and things will get ugly if it really happens. So next one would be respond to feedback. Yeah, there are a few games where I'm trying to give feedback to developers, but they fall to deaf ears, and I'm kind of disappointed. But there's also quite a lot of game devs who respond to my feedback for the games, especially the Oji-san typing, which I find the hard mode too hard, and they told me that it will get fixed in an update, but I'm not sure how the update will be delivered, considering that you can't submit an update anymore. There is a possibility that the game will be submitted again for next year, but let's see how things happen. My next advice is watch live streams of the game submitted. So there's an interesting case where there was a critical bug for the game that I streamed, and the devs saw the live stream and told me some emergency fix, which to be fair I didn't pay attention to when I download the game. And also they will give feedback for the games that they have streamed, and also through the live streams of your game you might learn something that you don't realize during the game development and make updates based on that. And the last advice that I can give is to play other game entries. So this is important because by playing other game entries you can take some ideas that you find improving your game and implement them. But I'm not sure if this counts as plagiarism. This is something that I can't give advice on. So be very careful when you actually do that. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so for this one, these advices are specifically for game devs who want to make their games more foreigner friendly. But of course I won't ask you to translate the game into English because translation takes time. But I am happy that there's one game which gets translated to English, which is multi-dimensional puzzle made by Tayo, and he had told me that he plans to upload the game to Unity Room. So first of all, and the most important one would be realizing that the world is watching. I mean, I'm here talking to you about how to make your game better, how to improve your game submission to GC Koushien 2023. So it's obvious that this game dev competition isn't just being watched upon by domestic people, and I also have quite a few viewers showing interest to the games that I have streamed so far. And in the future there will be more. I expect that there will be more people playing the game entries, and I do promotes quite a few of them over at Reddit. So, and after you realize this, then you can move on to other advices that I'm going to give you. So first is cultural sensitivities. So thankfully I do not run into this particular problem this year, but for last year there was a swastika theme level which is definitely going to cause problems in other countries. So when you make video games, you need to pay attention to cultural sensitivities all over the world, or at least in Anglophone countries. And the last thing that you want is bad press because of cultural insensitivities that is being in display on your game. The next advice that I can give is regarding accessibility. So I'm not sure how things are in Japan, but there is a growing voice. Crap. Okay, so okay. Now, okay, let's get back. So there is a growing voice, especially in the US, that game developers should provide accessibility to gamers with disabilities, something that I definitely agree upon. But beyond that, I really don't have much advice on this. So the next one would be leaving holes in language barrier. So the reason why I am able to play a lot of game entries despite not being fluent in Japanese is because a lot of those games do things that allows people to play the game without actually understanding the game text. So one primary way to do this is to show demonstrations alongside with the controls, and this alone has helped a lot. So this is something that you want to keep in mind when you are developing your game. And then the next one would be leaving holes in language barrier. So on that regard, try to replace text with other elements that doesn't require the use of language for understanding. And this is something that will depend heavily on the genre of your game. Of course, for visual novels, this advice doesn't apply. But this will depend on your creativity in the game development. My next advice would be streaming permissions. So in Japan, streaming is still at some degree restricted, but overseas people are definitely free to stream the games, even with monetization or member restrictions and all that. And if you really want to make your game popular with overseas gamers, you definitely have to allow players to stream their game for commercial purposes so that they can benefit from streaming the game. And you want to be as open as possible on that regards if you want to cater to overseas gamers. And the last one, and definitely a very important one, would be communications with overseas players. And by communications, I'm not talking about, say, tweeting in English or other languages. It will help, but that's not the primary thing that you need to do. The primary thing that you need to do is to respond to gamers who try to contact you, maybe regarding feedback, maybe they have something to say about the game that you make or everything else. So reply to them if that they happen to do so. And you don't even need to, say, reply back with translated stuff, because machine translation can be very faulty and it's kind of risky of sending the wrong message. So you can just reply back in Japanese and expect them to, translate the answer themselves. So that's all that I have to say on the matter. Tomorrow I'm going to have another talking stream for everything else that I have yet to cover. That stream will start on 9 p.m. UTC plus 8. That's 10 p.m. Japan time. Hopefully the next stream would be something that excites everyone, since there will be a surprise for you all. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.